Hey, it's Becky with Homeschooling with Secret Sauce, and we are continuing the conversation about the best way to teach basic math facts to your kids. And we've already talked about the necessity for us to slow down. Today, we're going to be talking about this idea of lingering about a number or a math concept long enough that our kids can really get a good grasp of what that number represents. And I'm going to introduce you to the concept of the math number of the day. And the reason that this is so powerful is that, again, we need to be able to collect samples. We talked about this in the last video. So if you haven't seen part two, I'm going to encourage you to go back and watch that so that you understand what it is that I mean by collect samples. But by having a math number of the day exercise, it takes just a couple minutes out of your math day, but it helps establish a very firm foundation for your kids mathematically in all of the abstract ways that we need our kids to understand what a particular number means, how it can be represented. So I have a couple worksheets that I'm going to show you, which the links are below. You can make your own. You can find different ones online, but these are available for you. And if you're in the Homeschooling with Secret Sauce membership group, these are inside the website. So just understand that. So the idea of the math number of the day, I'm going to just clip it right here. And I have one for younger kids and one for older kids as well. The difference, they'll contain the same types of information, sort of, but little kids, younger kids typically need more space in order to write. And so we want to make sure that we give space for their hands. So the idea of the number of the day is to give the kids a chance to explore that number and to represent it in many different ways. It helps with their overall comprehension, and it's concrete and core to getting them to understand and master those basic math facts. Let me turn on this light because my sunlight is going away. It's super important that they understand these basic concepts foundationally. Love technology, just love it. Okay, there we go. So it's super important that they understand these things. And by taking a couple minutes out of your day every day, I am fighting with my light right at the moment. By taking a few minutes out of their math day every day, you are giving this idea of this foundation importance and relevance. It's kind of giving it a spotlight, but in a subtle way, in a non-pressured way. So the types of things that you can do with a number of the day is randomly choose a number of the day. It could be today's date. It could be the year. You could take one, two, three, four dice, depending on how old your child is. And you can roll some dice and create a number randomly that way. Then you use the same type of math number of the day format or worksheet, depending on how old the child is. And then you write the number down on the paper, and then you start to explore the number. So say we pick the number, let me move this closer so that you can see. So let's pick a smallish number, and let's say it's 123. The first thing we can do is we can represent this number with tally marks. Now, if your kids are younger, you'd use a small number, a single or a two-digit number to get started. But as they get older, you increase the size so that they get comfortable with these concepts, even with larger and larger numbers. So the first thing you do is tally marks. And I'm not going to fill in the whole thing, but tally marks are those little hash marks where you count 4 and then you cross over, that's 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now that's 10. So you would represent the number of the day with tally marks, right? Easy peasy. You can also do this with sidewalk chalk outside. Super fun. How would you write that number in standard form? Remember, I believe it was part 1, we talked about the necessity of using the the proper vocabulary when teaching mathematics so that if and when they bump into algebra, trigonometry, and calculus later, these terms don't shock them. What do you mean standard form? Standard form is just how you represent a number with digits. So how would you write it in standard form? Just like the number is. So you would do 123. Okay. Word form is where they actually use the written words to spell out the number alphabetically. If the kids are younger, you can write it in pencil and then they trace over it. Don't make it hard. If they're a little bit older, you can write it in pencil, they can trace over it, and then they can write it themselves. Don't make it hard. If they're older and now they've learned how to spell those numbers because you've been using this type of a review daily, then they would just write the numbers there, the words there. If they misspell, don't make a big deal out of it. Just say great job and then write it correctly underneath it with almost no comment. It's just, oh, you're just gonna write it correctly underneath, right? So 100, see if I can write sideways. 120. Oh, look, I'm writing just like a kid because I'm writing sideways. 3. 123. Is that number odd or even? This is a simple conversation, not a big deal. Over the course of a couple days, couple weeks, kids will start to understand the concept of odd or even. So it ends in an odd number, 1, 3, 5, 7, or 9. That makes it an odd number. So they simply circle the odd word. If it's even, they would circle even. You would write it in Roman numerals. So 123, let's see, in Roman numerals, 100 is represented by a C. So it would be 100, 20, 10, 20, 1, 2, 3. And that is the Roman numeral for 123. If I ever do a video like this and I get something wrong, just graciously correct me in the comments. Don't be snarky. We all make mistakes. So that's 123. Now you would write it. This is the concept of place value. These numerals, the numbers, are digits. Digits. The 3 is a 3 because it is in this place in that number. So place value. If I move the 3 to where the 2 is, it's no longer 3, it's actually 30. So teaching the concept of place value simply by putting what number is in the ones place. Well, it's the 3. What number is in the tens place? That's the 2. What number is in the hundreds place? That's the 1. Very simple conversation. This is not really 1. This is really 100. This is not really 2. This is really 20. This is really 3. And the number value is determined by where its place is in the place value. Can you see how valuable this is? All because you rolled 3 dice, all because you chose 3 cards, all because you tell the child or ask the child, pick a number. Can you pick a number just off the top of your head? It has to have 3 numbers. And then they pick that number. So tally mark, standard form, odd or even, word form, Roman numerals, place value, expanded notation is where you actually show the true value of a number because of where it is. So you would take the 1 and that's really 100. So it's 100 plus, forgive my writing, it's because I'm writing sideways, plus 20 plus 3. And then the child would draw a representation of this number in a picture. Maybe they draw 123 bugs. Maybe they draw 123 crayons. Maybe they draw bubble numbers and then they color it in beautifully. This is subjective. That means It's really up to them how they represent that number. And then the next day, tomorrow, you pick a new number and you run through the same activities. Doesn't that make sense? So, number of the day helps the math number of the day, really helps the child understand this number from all the different angles. Now, if they're older, this format enters in a couple different concepts. So the number of the day papers that I created have a few different activities for the kids to do. For the older kids, when they're fifth grade and above, then you can start introducing things like divisibility. Can the number be divided evenly by 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10? This will be very instrumental later when they're doing things like reducing fractions or math. This is super, super helpful for kids to be able to look at a number, 3 or 4 digits, and to determine, can you divide evenly by the number 7 or the number 4? And the great news is that since you're taking the time to linger on these concepts, you can spend a week or a month looking at numbers that are divisible by 3 and then seeing if the child can find, well, what is it that makes a number divisible by 3? Or you teach, what are the divisibility rules? What determines by a glance that a number is divisible by 4? For instance, if a number is divisible by 4, no matter how large the number, you look at the 2 last numbers on the right. If they're both zeros, divisible by 4. You can divide it evenly by 4. If those last 2 digits are divisible by 4, 48, 24, 16, etc., then that number is divisible by 4, no matter how many digits that number has. It's super cool once you understand that. So odd or even, you have your number times like some little math up here that you can do. You can determine whether or not the number is prime or composite. If you don't know what those are, that's a really great lean into lesson. Fantastic lesson for older kids is to memorize the primes up through 500, especially if they're going to do higher math. Only one of my kids actually did it, but I did try with my other kids too. Out of 5 of my sons, only 1 is a true mathematician brain, and that really mattered to him whether or not it was prime or composite. However, if they go up through algebra, trigonometry, and calculus, knowing the primes off the top of their head is a really great time saver when it comes to doing math when it gets more complicated. And then there's basic math things that they can do, representing the number by inches or feet. So these types of math number of the day activities, again, whether you create your own, find your own, or grab the ones that I have down in the descriptions, it's a simple format, a template that then you pick a number every day, and then the child goes through, your student goes through, or you both work through what these different things are. It's okay if they're challenging at first. It really is. You might not know all the primes to 500. I don't remember them. And again, a prime number and a composite number, those are vocabulary words that you want to be familiar with and you want your student to be familiar with so that when they get higher up in math, they don't hit their face against these vocabulary words and cause them to take more time than necessary to complete their math. And I will go into prime and composite numbers later, but it's one of those things that as you hear these vocabulary words, and if you don't know them, then you linger and you learn into them. You linger and you lean into them and you discover together, and then you repeat and review daily until it becomes set in their memory and then eventually automatic. And then you can file it away and every once in a while pull it out of the hat like it's a rabbit and say, oh, is this a prime or composite number? Oh, is this odd or even? Is it divisible by 4, etc.? So leaning in, diving deeper into basic math facts, there is great value in taking a number, a random number of the day, and then filtering it through the basic math concepts, things like tally marks, standard form, written form, expanded notation, odd, even, prime, composite, divisibility, representing a number as a decimal, representing a number as a fraction, representing a number as a percentage, or changing it into a percentage. All these things, converting it into inches, converting it into feet, converting it into miles, etc. You're massaging the number so the child, the student, becomes very familiar with all of the different ways that that number can be represented. It's powerful. So linger and lean into a math number of the day and make it just a 3 to 5 minute portion of every day that you do math. It can even eventually turn into a race. It can turn into a competition. Your child can challenge you. It can be, I'm almost ready for you. Go do your math number of the day and I'll meet you at the table. So it can be a filler. It can be a jump starter. It can be, in order to go out and play with your friends, in order to play your video, this is your ticket. So do your math number of the day and it buys you. So you can use this in so many ways: creative parenting, creative homeschooling, a time filler, a foundation layer, super important skill. Ready? So go grab your resources and let me know if you like the resources that I created. I'd love to hear what your feedback is in the comments, and I will see you in the next video where we're going to continue the conversation about the best way to teach basic math facts. See you soon.